Not our first
Not our
new
first, but our second.
year-ish.
Second of 2024. Let's go, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's find opportunities and problems and not problems of opportunities.
Oh my gosh. The opportunity to say problems, but the problems, well, I don't know, man. Like this, I think that was probably last week's episode was one of the best launches into a new year that I was tired going into that podcast, and now I'm like, it was like, whoa, let's go, right? Like Don brings the energy, and if you didn't see it and you're really looking to maybe restart your 2024, go back to the previous episode with Don Wettrick. um you know uh I don't even know where to begin. I've known Don
I
for a
mean,
while, right?
let's
Yeah.
start with the end. I mean,
Yeah.
he ended with this idea of like it's a take on, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take,
Yeah.
right? You will have regret in not getting started, jumping headfirst into disrupting education this year. If you listen to this podcast, here's your sign. Like, you're obviously consuming it
Yep.
for a reason, and that reason is different for our listeners. But I think this is your sign for 2024 to be like, what is your opportunity? And, don't think like, oh, a year from now or 2 years from now, the regret
Mm-hmm.
that you may have by not getting started on a project, or coming back to a project. Like, it's okay to restart something too. And I think that can be a challenge for people to overcome mentally. I love that he said that the problem that he solves is like it's around mental health,
Yep.
and allowing people to innovate and think about solving problems. Well, that is so crucial right now with learning. And it doesn't matter if you are, in any stage in the educational system, K through 12, you're in college, you're in the workforce, you're an educator, you're in the system, you're out of the system. Like, that's what I'm taking away from this year, that you can start today. You have an opportunity. We all see problems in the world. And if there's the ability for you to solve a piece of it,
Mm-hmm.
do it.
Empowering right there.
So
Very
empowering.
empowering. And I think that what you said there is exactly right. When he said, I'm working on, like, social emotional and mental health, that was out of left field. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's right. That's probably one of our first guests that kind of put it that way. We've always talked about social emotional learning, mental health and such, but Don's a straight, right, I'm going to give you the answer, and then I'm going to tell you some awesome stories behind it. But he always goes right into the answer, and his answer was wonderful, just like you said there, Alli. You're allowed to complain. You're allowed to complain. You're allowed to see things bad. You're allowed to get mad at things, and you're allowed to find opportunities to fix them. And you don't have to fix it all, just small parts, like you said there. Wow, that was mind-blowing right there. And along with that, taking your biggest innovative centers for communities is a high school. I don't know where to, like, that's a mic drop. Those are a couple of mic drop moments that came from that podcast. And it just got me thinking. We'll start with you. Like, what kind of like ideas did you take, like, from that? Like, can you see in education, I mean, even at post-secondary that you teach, even teaching skydivers, like, what are some of the opportunities that you saw there?
This may kind of answer your question,
Mhm.
but what I was picturing was when he was, this part was kind of off the air with him mentioning people who are just doing innovative stuff. And it got me thinking about, he was talking about how there was this exercise that everyone in a classroom wrote down names of who they would trust with basically a $2
Yeah.
million project. And of the 30 people, only like 5 names were listed.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked like the 5 names, did you write down your own name? And those people were like, yes, I would trust myself with this project. And then the people who wrote down those names and they didn't include themselves, they were like, well, the point of this is, and what I think really hits is, well, why wouldn't you trust yourself with the project, and what is preventing you from being that person that you voted with for someone else, right? So that's
Right.
a kind of a moment, and I think about myself. I would have totally voted for myself like that. I'm not trying to be narcissistic, and he talks about that on the podcast, but it's like I really would trust myself. That's why I've already taken on like leadership roles at the skydiving club that I'm part of in Wisconsin. I am one of the key leaders after only teaching this course in New York for 1 year. Like, and whenever I was in a school district, it did not take very long to be put on leadership roles, and I was well trusted. And so it's kind of like, I think the disruptive part, and it's the uneasy part of this conversation potentially, is like, are you in a place where you would trust yourself for those types of projects? Would you move forward with them? And I also liked how he pointed out, right, what you can see a problem as an opportunity. But so I do live in a very rural part of Wisconsin. And there's strengths and cons to that living. But when he mentioned the project with hotlines between like the mayor and like a teacher in his program, I instantly thought of the local teacher at Birchwood High School down the road from me, and she is the economic development of the city. She could retire at any time, and it would not only be detrimental to the school, but the community, because she works at the local restaurant. She sits on the commerce board. She runs the blood drives, and like so much economic, like community building and problem solving for the community. And it's like she probably has more influence than the mayor, than the local people. And so it's like she's trusted because she's taking action. And I guarantee you could identify that person at your school district, in your local community there. But I think it's untapped talent, right? They may not even recognize that they're just doing it because they're just naturally bended towards solving problems, and they've invested in this place, this community. So I think there's, even if you are not necessarily feel like you want to be like the face or something, like that capacity can be built by partnering with those types of people who get it done. And finding those voices, I think, is really, really important when you're trying to disrupt education, solve any kind of problem. That was a huge takeaway from the podcast for me.
You said a great line there. You're trusted because you take action. I love that. I mean, you're not trusted if you don't take action, right? I mean, that's a wonderful, I don't know where you get these gems, but 2024 is your like quote year. That was killer. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, but it makes sense, right? You take action, people are going to trust you, right? They're going to, you create like those 3 or 4 kids who were on that list. Great Seth Godin conversation there. The ideas that I'm getting right away is, how do we bring in, the school systems are very slow to change. However, how do we get our students working? Well, the first place I see right away is history or social studies, depending on what your school calls it. And why is it their capstone class? If you're in that kind of area of teaching, reach out to your mayor and work projects. I mean, right? You want to learn U.S. history or the history of the state or whatever, there it is, right? And those projects right there, what are the problems that you see, and make those come to life. I'll be honest, like when I started doing some of the stuff that I did in class, it was highly against a lot of the stuff that I was supposed to be doing. But because we get the autonomy sometimes as educators, And there's not enough people out there to look over your shoulder. Let's be honest, right? Like there's not enough administrators. They're not, even if they're, not the innovative type, you can innovate in your classroom and you can do some amazing things, because I guarantee you, if you bring in some people from the community or, from an area of work or whatever subject you're in, and they're working with you and your students, they're not going to say no. They're not going to say no. I mean, unless you're working with like some convict or something, but like you know what I'm saying? Like and that's what we did. Like we brought in Coca-Cola. We brought in, we took kids to Hyatt, the downtown. Like that's what we can do in Chicago, but that doesn't mean you can't do, just like you said, somebody who runs the farmers market, or you can do all this stuff. So those challenges and opportunities are out there. And I love asking the kids to complain. I've done that before. But I'll put a little asterisk on here, because it does take time to get kids that they're not going to switch on. And I know Don knows this, and I know you know this, Alli, but they're not going to switch on and just say, oh, wait, I can, like, here's an opportunity to fix that. And then they're just going to run, do it. That's where teaching comes in. I used to start all my entrepreneurship classes on how are you going to fix school, right? Name something about school you don't like, and you get those easily, food, classrooms, the bathrooms, whatever, and then you were like, okay, so you have an opportunity to fix something, so I want you to try to pitch it. Most kids would get into it, and then they'd see they have to do work right away if they've never been in this mindset. And of course, what happens? You're a teen, you rebel, and it's natural for you to say, right? It's the Dunning-Kruger curve. It's like, yeah, I'm going to fix it. Oh, wait, I gotta talk to people. I gotta work, and they'd rather take a test, to be honest. They'd rather bubble in a test. If you keep going, and if you keep working the angle of, let's go fix your opportunity, you can do this. Why aren't you going to be the person that trusts yourself with the $2 million? This will work, and it does work. I just had about maybe 4 or 5, 6 kids in my entrepreneurship classes 2/3 of the way through a semester. I only get a semester with them, which is about 90 days. It seems like a long time, but to gain those, to get that mindset change. Now, if it was a year-long class, no problem. We got 2/3 of the year, or to play around and get there in the mindset now. But even into like late into a semester where a kid gets that light bulb, they work fast. And they might not be as fast as some of the other kids, but you have to show them that. And I think that's the greatest message I took from Don, starting 2024. I mean, that got me inspired.
And it also, we've said it before, we're going to open up this year with it again. You got to give it time. And the investment period, like if you go and invest, I don't even care if it's $30,000. It's not like you're going to be a millionaire in a month. Right. It takes time to have that money accrue. And there's this old adage, like if I were to give you $1 million today, or I were to give you a penny and it would double every day for 30 days, which one would you take? And a lot of people will just take the $1 million instantly. And actually, I think it's like over $5 million, like at the end of 30 days, if you just waited a month. And, it's this investment into the community and making the high school a local innovation hub. Heck, let's just bring town hall to the high school. Why are they separate entities? Like business, commerce, like all of that could be working together. It sounds disruptive maybe, but also super practical. If you're really trying
practical
to
disruption,
all of these things. Practical disruption. I mean, like, would it be like a lot at the beginning? Like most things, yes, you would have that Dunning-Kruger effect. You would have this like burst of energy. You would have Mount Stupid, and you would have that ebb and flow, and you would hit a low point without a doubt. However, just because the market swings down, it's not like all the investors pull out, right? Like you wait it out, you're gonna see gains over time.
Yep.
And so it's literally committing to a project, committing to the innovation, which I really liked that term.
Mm-hmm.
And giving it time to flourish. I don't actually know how long Don's been doing this. He said he left the classroom before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how long, he's been building this. It didn't, where he's at now is not where it started. The
Right.
opportunities he has now is because he continued to put himself out there. He continued to create and not scroll. He continued to have conversations like we're having and take action. And it's his current level. And you can't look at where someone else is at and be like, oh, I wish I was there, without doing any work. You have to find kind of the micro tasks and things you can do
Mm-hmm.
in order to have it be fruitful over time, right? Like my grandpa, who listens to this podcast, my 93-year-old grandpa,
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was in high school and he was showing me around his garden. He's a master gardener, and this was back when he lived in Illinois with my grandma, before she passed away. And he was like, oh, I just planted this pear tree. And he was showing me a bunch of other trees. And I was like, cool, grandpa, but like, how long is it going to be until you get
Mm-hmm.
pears from this? In my mind, I'm like, this is going to be like a long time. And you're old, you know? And he's just like, oh, it'll probably be like 8 to 10 years
Mm-hmm.
before he's going to see he's going to water this plant. He's going to trim this plant and nourish this plant for
Mm-hmm.
a decade potentially before he gets a single pear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Education wants the instant gratification. They want the weeds. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want the trees. They don't want these long-term, not, I mean, in general, as an entity, the educational field wants this lightning fast problem solving. It needs to be done yesterday. We don't have time. You have
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yeah.
It's actually your greatest gift. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's investing in the time and not switching gears every school year.
Yeah. Yeah. I just see small projects, just small projects, like right around the corner of your classroom. If you're a marketing teacher, or any kind of teacher, like, you put out a QR code just in the hallway and say, don't scan this, or, scan this if you want to learn about something. Like, it can be a subject, and then you can talk to the kids. Why did so many kids scan it? Why did kids not scan it? You get data there. Like, it's just curiosity there. You have, like, maybe there's not enough time in a passing period to go to the bathroom, so let's solve that. What can we do differently? What would you do? They don't have to be big problems. And I think that everybody wants to go to the big problems, but let's start breaking down the big problems. I mean, we talked about slightly a little bit about the, high absence rates, right? Okay, so let's dig into it, right? Let's go backwards into that. Let's not try to solve everybody's. Let's try to solve one person's and try to figure theirs out, and there's so much opportunity in all these challenges. And we can bring these into the classroom. And I think that's, I don't make New Year's resolutions, to be honest, but I do think that this is a goal of mine in the classroom this year, is to really start seeking out different problems in the everyday life of a student, and having them kind of identifying them, and then breaking it down into very manageable pieces that within a curriculum we can play around with them. 2024 is going to be a playground, and I think this is what keeps a lot of people being lifelong learners, because it's so fun, right? I mean, it's fun. It gets fun when you understand what goes well and even what doesn't go well. And keeping in the mindset that you're going to grow something and try to fix things. Man, it beats the hell out of just sitting around crabbing.
It does. I can remember going to lunch with teachers, and some days, you'd have these really inspiring conversations, and you'd sit around and you'd just be like, wow, like it was so positive and uplifting. When I think about like how many of those days happen versus like basically crab bucket days
Mm-hmm.
where, it was event session, I just remember like I left those types of conversations and didn't really make me excited to go back into the classroom and teach. I have to kind of like shake off lunch, and it's like being aware of kind of like the energy that you put yourself around. And if
Mm-hmm.
you are in a place where you are feeling the tug to innovate, um get yourself out of environments where the energy is like a crab bucket, because crabs actually won't let other crabs like crawl out. They'll literally like pull them back down to keep them in the bucket. And so it's kind of like this negative energy thing. And if you can find an area in your life, you and become aware of maybe your own tendencies to kind of crab and
Mm-hmm.
stay in a negative space, even just finding that opportunity, like it's okay to see problems. And we all have bad days, and I'm not shaming people for venting or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. Totally guilty of it, 100%. But there is a switch that you can make, and protecting your energy, and who you talk to, how you spend your time, the energy that you kind of surround yourself with in the education field, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can listen to this podcast. Hopefully it's uplifting, it's giving you ideas. We're introducing you to people that you've never heard of before. I know I leave inspired every week. Or you could, as Don Wetrick, you could go watch the Kardashians.
Right.
That's a totally different way to spend your time and energy. So like protecting it and being aware of how you spend your time and the conversations that you have is a step that I know I am going to be super mindful of. Like you, I don't do New Year's resolutions, but I do try and think of like practices and kind of things that I want to work towards, that are usually positive and healthy and renewing. It's like you can come up with a goal to lose something, you can come up with a goal to gain something, and that framing is really important. And so I think Don, he obviously frames problems as opportunities, and that framing is really resonating with Gen Z. But
Disease.
the Z's, but it resonates with me and you. And so that speaks to
Mm-hmm.
the like literally the opportunity that is there with even our words and how we're talking. And so I think it's really important for the podcast this year is to be encouraging with a topic like disrupting education. Isn't always like the most fun. There's a lot of problems. And we ended kind of towards the end of 2023 an episode where we looked at the challenges
Mm-hmm.
and the trends, but we really tried to end it with, look, like these are all opportunities. Like all of these problems are opportunities for someone to solve. And I loved when he said, somebody is you.
Yeah.
Pierced my heart a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've yeah, and I wrote a blog on this, and I'll probably post it here too, but finding the people who are energetic on a Monday, like hang around them. Like that's an easy one, right? Find the people who are coming to work, not toxic positivity, but I'm talking about people who are genuinely like, yo, let's go, I'm tired every morning. I feel the Groundhog's Day every once in a while, but there's opportunity there. And by the way, the other thing that I heard Don say, and I'll kind of end on this, is when bring out the problems, right? I've talked to my students. Students ask, what's going on with you, and I'm like, well, I'm trying to figure out where to go with this class because this is what's happening. And they'll talk to you. Guess what? They will, because if they see you as a human, not somebody shoving homework down their throat, they actually talk to you. So I think those are a couple of just quick hints. we've got a lot of great people coming up on the podcast early 24 here and throughout the year. I think we're changing our kind of mindset. I think this is a good start of, okay, we're going to look at problems, but then we're going to look at the opportunities behind them. We have an author coming up on a parenting role. We have somebody going to be talking about that social media. Are you scrolling mindlessly or are you creating? What Don said, this young man has kind of put some things out there. We have a lot of different guests. Alli and I will be hitting some topics as well throughout the year. Come on, let's go for a ride for 2024. Let's challenge ourselves, Alli, to just keep this going all the way through the year. In good times and bad, we're going to find the opportunities to disrupt education. Sound good?
Absolutely. I love that. That's the mantra. Thank you, John, for giving us that framing for the year.
Yeah, I love it.
And you didn't ask, but my final thoughts are,
yes.
You know, I had this pull in 2023 and it was, all about kind of getting offline more and consuming less, and creating. And so while we create on the podcast and there's other areas that I create and they aren't so necessarily so public on social media, I was convicted in terms of like, you do need to share your journey in some kind of way, and not expect necessarily anything from it at first, but getting it out there is a power move, and scrolling less. So I've removed the scrolling less, and I would encourage our listeners to winners create, and they are not scrolling all the time. And so even if you can cut out 10-20 minutes of your day, start small. That is, I think, a message where that could resonate with all of our listeners, is how can you create today? How can you innovate? And just start small. And there's a huge opportunity in that for 2024.
Trust yourself with $2 million. There we go. Well, for Alli Privitt, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Hey, we've got a great year. Thanks for hanging out with us early on. We're just going to keep going. We got great guests, and we appreciate you guys for listening. Until next time, we'll catch you later on the Disrupt Education podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrawser or Alli Privitt.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.